a grant through the La Crosse Public Education Foundation to have Neng be able to come and speak to all of you. And then for our Hmong students, you are going to be able to speak with him again tomorrow. Mrs. Thiel, I think if you turn up the volume on your board, that might do it.
It won't, the volume for some reason won't even come out of my board. Other videos will come, like everything else works out of my board, but for some reason the Zoom audio won't come through my board.
When I did the little arrow, I don't know if you can see on my screen here, the little arrow down by the mute, the sound, I had to switch the sound to this SW audio, and then I could get the sound to come out. Ah, bingo. If anybody else has that problem, if you go down here to mute and then the little caret and click on the SW audio, then the sound will come out from your whatever those fancy pants screens are called.
Well, now I can't hear it all. Oops.
Okay, got a couple more coming here.
I'm here.
All right, let me make sure I've let everybody in. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Here comes our friend Neng Now, and he is an excellent speaker that is going to be teaching you about Hmong culture today. So Neng, I'm just gonna go ahead and let you take it away, and I will keep letting people in over here, okay?
Great, wonderful. All right, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm super excited to teach everyone about a little bit about Hmong music and about Hmong culture. I know you all have been talking a little bit about that in school, so it makes me really happy that I could get to teach you a little bit, because I know that as we live in communities with all different types of people from different backgrounds, it's really cool to learn and grow from each other and share things that we can appreciate about each other's cultures and backgrounds and histories. So it makes me excited and happy to be here. My name is Neng, and I am a Hmong artist and musician and author. I do a lot of things, but I guess you could just call me a Hmong artist. And again, I'm here to talk about Hmong music mostly. So I know that you all are around 4th, 5th grade, maybe some a little younger. So around 9, 10 years of age, give or take a few years. And it might seem really, really far in the future for you, but pretty soon you'll be in high school. And the reason why I bring that up is because I want to tell a story about when I was in high school and I was 15 years old. So only a few years older than you all. But I took a lot of hard classes, and there was one question that I remember. And it's almost been 15 years now, but I can remember this question that my teacher asked me. It was the hardest question I was ever asked in school. And it wasn't in, people might think math is really hard or science is really hard, but the hardest question I was ever asked was not a math question. It wasn't a science question. It was an art question. And my teacher asked us, "What is art?" And that was a really hard question for me.
That was my fault, sorry. I was trying to mute some teachers.
So the hardest question I was ever asked in school, and this includes elementary school, middle school, high school, college, was what is art? So I want you to really think about that. What is art? Because that was the hardest question I was ever asked. And we might think, oh, art is something that looks pretty, but that's not necessarily true, right? Because I might like this painting and you might hate that painting, and you might like this painting and I might not like that painting. So it might not be pretty to me, but it's still art. So today I want to ask you a very similar question, and it has to do with a specific art. It has to do with music. I want to ask you all, what is music? And I really want you to think about that. Like, what is music? Emphasis on that word is. And I want you to go ask your parents, and this is kind of informal homework from me, all right? I want you to go ask your parents. I want you to ask your teachers. I want you to ask your music teachers. And it's because it's a really hard question about what is music. Sometimes we might think, again, like what I thought when I was in high school, oh, it's something that sounds nice, right? Music is something that sounds nice, but there might be music, there is music that I like that I'm sure you don't like, and there's music that you like that I'm sure I don't like. And it doesn't sound nice to me, or it might not sound nice to you, but it's still music. So I want you to think about what is music as we talk more and more about music. But first I want to play a little bit of a Hmong instrument. This is a sort of flute. In Hmong, we call it a tam blai. And tra means a flute, and blai means a reed. And so you can see this reed right here on this tam blai, which means reed flute, literally, in Hmong. But I want to play a little bit of it so you can hear this instrument on this Hmong music on this instrument, and then I'll play other music. And you can see I have my computer a little bit lower so that you can see my fingers as I play. We'll move on to this instrument and my fingers will be down low like this so you can still see. But for the first instrument, this is made of bamboo, and the reed right here, the blai, is made from a sort of a mixture of copper, brass. It's a brass mostly, but brass, bronze, copper, all these copper alloys. So a type of metal.
Okay.
So that's just a little snippet from this instrument. But something really cool about Hmong music is that it's not just music. Everything that I played is actually part of the Hmong language. So Hmong music and Hmong words are so closely tied that it is almost impossible to play Hmong music without speaking Hmong words. The Hmong language is very unique and very special, that it is very musical, and when we play Hmong music, it actually copies the languages the words that we speak. So if you're a Hmong musician and if you learn Hmong music, in order to learn Hmong music, you have to first learn how to speak Hmong, so that when you play an instrument, you can also speak words through the instrument. And that's really hard to visualize and to conceptualize unless you draw some sort of parallel, because we can't do that in English. English is not a language that does that. So I want to demonstrate that on an instrument that will be a little bit easier for you to hear how there's similarities, okay? This instrument is called danya, and it's one of the, if anyone is interested in archaeology, if you want to be an archaeologist when you grow up, this is one of the oldest instruments in human history. So we have found relics and antiques and copies of this instrument that are thousands of years old. Sometimes they're made from bones, sometimes they're made from wood. This one happens to be made from brass. Hmong instruments, we really like brass. Brass is a very special metal to Hmong people, so we really like this type of metal, and we make a lot of our instruments from it. So this instrument is a little bit quiet. So teachers, if you can't hear, I'll try to make it loud, but maybe you can turn up your volume a little bit. So I'll try to speak a little bit lower, and then you can turn up your volume so I'm not blasting your ears out while I play this one. This instrument is usually used, and music we play just for fun, and it just sounds nice to us, so we play it. But back in the day, Hmong people used this instrument when they were dating or when they wanted to talk really sweet words to if they had someone that they really loved in their life. So I want to show examples of how it imitates Hmong speech, because this one you can really hear how it sounds like Hmong words. So for example, if I wanted to say the word for running a long way or walking a far distance, in Hmong, if we say kia kia, kia means to run, but if I say kia kia and I repeat that word, it means to run really far. So if I say kia, if I want to say, I ran really far or I walked really far to get here, and I say kia kia, now listen to that, kia kia, and I'm going to play it on this, and I wanted you to listen to see if you can hear how kia sounds the same on danya and how when I say it with my voice. So again, kia kia. Can you say it? Can you hear that? So it's kia kia. When I sing it, it's kia kia if I just say it normally. If I sing it, it'll say kia kia. And if I play it, kia kia. So if I want to say me, like I ran really far, and I would say gu kia kia. If we play it on this instrument, gu kia kia. And I sing it, gu kia kia. Now I play it. Oh, it snapped one more time. Gu kia kia. So I just repeated that, right? Gu kia kia, gu kia kia. And you can kind of hear the similarities. Of course, they sound a little bit different, but you can hear how this mimics Hmong speech. So if I wanted to say like gu kia kia tua tsa, and gu kia kia tua tsa would mean I ran really far to get here, right here where I am right now. Gu kia kia tua tsa. Now listen, if I sing it, it's gu kia kia tua tsa, gu kia kia tua tsa. So that's 5 words. Now you can listen to the 5 words on this instrument. Gu kia kia tua tsa. Raise your hand if you could hear the similarities. Yeah, good, great. Thank you for raising your hands for those you can hear. And if it's a little hard for you, it's okay. I have more instruments that we're going to demonstrate, but I want you to guess in your head. Make a guess. So we all speak different languages in the classrooms, and in different countries there's different languages. In different communities within the same country there's different languages too. I want you to guess in your head how many languages there are in the whole world. And maybe you can turn around to the person next to you and turn to a friend, a classmate next to you, and guess with them. Talk to them how many languages do you think there are in the whole world? I'll give just everyone a few seconds to discuss that. But in the whole entire world, every single country together. Now, there's not like a single right answer, because sometimes there's different languages that people might think is different language, and some linguists who are people who study languages, some linguists might say, oh, those are actually the same language, they're just different accents. And some people might say, oh, those are different languages. And it might differ on when you ask those speakers too. They might say, oh yeah, we can understand those people's languages, so we think it's the same language. Or, oh, it's different enough that we think it's a different language. But there's a ballpark number that I'll give. So everyone's done a great job discussing and guessing. And in the world, if you count every single language on every continent and every country, there are about 7,000 languages. 7,000. That is a lot of languages, right? So there's 7,000 languages that are spoken in the world today, right now. So that means that of 7,000 languages, there's at least 7,000 different cultures and different ways of life and different music, different art. So I want to remind you all that we have so much to learn from each other, and there's so much diversity in the world. And the more we travel and talk to each other and make friends that are different from us, we get to learn and we get to grow. So today you're learning a little bit of Hmong music and what makes Hmong music unique. And I think the coolest thing about Hmong music is, of the 7,000 languages that are in the world, Hmong is the only language that can use music to mimic and to recreate our words. With every instrument that we Hmong people play, we are speaking Hmong through the instrument. So Hmong is the only language that does that, and that is what makes Hmong so special and so cool. And every culture has that something about them. So I want you to think and appreciate about how diverse the world is. And I want to rewind a little bit again and ask you another really hard question. And this comes from a music teacher of mine. His name was Mr. Ulrich, and he was also a high school music teacher, different from my art teacher before. But Mr. Ulrich said something really interesting to me when I was in high school. He was my band teacher. And so I play all these Hmong instruments, but one of the first instruments I learned that was not a Hmong instrument was the alto saxophone. So if any of you play the alto saxophone, I haven't played it for a really long time, but if you play an instrument, keep playing it. It's really good for your brain and it's really good for your creativity. And I really want to encourage you to play that instrument if you do, whatever instrument it may be. But Mr. Ulrich said this to me. He said, if you take music, and in Western music, we read sheet music, right? We read and it tells us how to play. In Hmong music, we just think about what we're going to say and we say it with our words. So it's very different from Western music in that we're not reading, but we're thinking about what we want to say in words. It's very similar to how when you speak, you don't have to write it down before you speak, right? You just speak. Whatever you want to say, you can just say it out. And that's how Hmong music is. Whatever we want to say, we just kind of say it and play it out. And that makes Hmong music very special, and that we don't necessarily need to read something. We can, of course, if we want to. But Mr. Ulrich, I'm getting sidetracked here. So Mr. Ulrich said, what if you took sheet music and you gave it to a computer? So everything that we use, from our phones to the computers that you might be watching this webinar on today, what if we told the computer to read that sheet music and to play that sheet music to us through the microphone? Would it be music? And Mr. Ulrich, he challenged our class, and he said he thought that wouldn't be music, because if a computer played music, it could just read, and it could play it perfectly, and it would know an eighth note is an eighth note and a quarter note is a quarter note. But Mr. Ulrich wanted us to say that wanted us to really understand that music has to come from a person. Music has to come from an artist, a musician who has some sort of meaning and something deeper to it. So I want to challenge you to think about that as well. Because when we think about different instruments, especially Hmong music is a great example of this, but when we're playing instruments, we add meaning to it and we add words to it, and there's a certain depth, but it doesn't have to be difficult. So because computers and all that stuff is very difficult, but to demonstrate how music can be simple as well, I want to show you this instrument right here. So this is a little tiny cute flute. It's very similar to a recorder. You blow from up here, this hole right there, and this is the hole that makes sound. And then you have only two fingers. Most flutes have at least 6 holes, like this one has 6 holes, but this one only has 2. and you can play some great music on it. So Hmong music, as I said again, is always Hmong words. So I want you to listen to the difference or the similarity when I play this and when I speak words. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to speak it, just like I did with Tanya, okay? So on Tanya, I did stuff like kikia, which means, again, to run really far away. This one, if I wanted to say, for example, where are you? We would say, con nhóc khó từ, con nhóc khó từ. And khó từ means where, and con nhóc means you are. So we would say, con nhóc khó từ, like, where are you? Where in the world are you? So if I wanted to say, let's just do two words for now. Khó từ, meaning where. If I did, khó từ is just khó, I just cover this hole and then I cover this hole. But I'm also doing stuff with my tongue and my lips, and in music we call that ornamentation. So we want to ornamentate our notes and make it sound like the words khó từ. So I'm gonna play three words. Nhỏ khó từ. Nhỏ khó từ means nhỏ means to be or to live, and khó từ means where. So nhỏ khó từ means where are you right now, or where are you situated, where are you living right now. So nhỏ khó từ, nhỏ khó từ, nhỏ khó từ. And we can see that when I do khó, when I say the word khó, it's at the back of my throat, like right here, and I use my tongue to go sound khó. And to mimic that, I just tap this hole while I'm holding this second hole. So khó, and it mimics what your tongue does in the back of your throat when you say khó. And then when I say tư starts with the letter T. And when the letter T, the t, it's like a very harsh sound. It's not a soft sound like when we say mom, right? That M is like a soft sound, or like pet, where P is also a soft sound. When we say a T sound, a T is a really harsh sound. So when I say duh, I do what's called tonguing, and I put my tongue right on this hole and I lift it off, and that creates a t sound. So khó từ is, and when you play a lot of Hmong music, when you just hear that, you'll know exactly what that Hmong musician is playing. So I want to play a little bit of this, and then we'll demonstrate something, okay? And you can see that I'm using this hand right here, even though this only has two holes. I'm using my hand here to change the sound from this flute. So usually we might think of just playing with our fingers, but if you play instruments like the trumpet or the trombone, the tuba, sometimes there's a little thing, the mute, that you put at the end of it to make it quieter, or you can put your hand in there and change it, the sound. That's what I'm doing with this flute as well. So and so that this going like this makes it lower, and opening it makes the note higher. And this part, again, I played a love song, and I was saying in the Hmong language and with Hmong music. I have a girl that I really, really love, and I don't know where she is, and I want to ask where she is because I want to see her. And so Hmong music, and a lot of music, not just Hmong music, but music in general, talks about really emotional things, right? We use music to talk about emotion, about love, about happiness, about sadness. And that's why when my teacher, Mr. Ulrich, said robots can't play music, he said that in large part because robots don't have feelings, or computer doesn't have feelings, so it can't add those emotions to their music. But I want to take about 2 minutes. I think I can actually do this in under 3 minutes to make this instrument out of paper, a very similar instrument like this one out of paper. And I want to show you all that music can be very, very simple as well, and it's more important than just so I'm going to roll this up. More important, this is just a regular piece of printer paper. More important than how special or expensive your instrument is the meaning that you put behind your music and what it means. So now that I've rolled this piece of paper up, this is just, again, a regular piece of printer paper, and you can see that it's just rolled up. I'm gonna take some tape right here. I chose blue tape today so that you can see it on the camera, but you can use any type of tape. And again, I'm just gonna do this in a few minutes, so you can go home tonight and you can try to do this by yourself too, and you can probably make one that sounds a lot better than my flute, because I'm going to do this really, really fast. So you see this tape? It doesn't look pretty, but I hope it'll work and I can be able to play music on it. So now I'm going to draw on this side a little square on the opposite side of the tape. See that square right there? And I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm just going to cut this. Now, when my grandparents, they grew up in Laos, and a lot of what they did was garden and farm, and they grew rice. And when you had to harvest the rice, you could make these instruments in the rice fields with just the rice stems, and you would just do it really fast and you could play music right there. And I'm going to show you an even more simple music, or a more simple instrument, in a little bit. So now I took this and I cut that square. You can see I didn't even cut it well. It's not even on the square that I drew. But remember how we rolled it up, and so because we rolled it up, there's different layers. So I'm going to take this pencil and I'm going to separate the paper layers. And then when you blow through the layers, it should make some noise, and you can do music. You can play music. So now I created this little hole. You see how there's my pencil marks right here? And let's see if when I blow into this, it'll make some sound. Now, it's not going to be as loud as the bamboo one. You guys hear that? Now, so just that easily, I made a little instrument. Now, it's not as loud as this one, but now I'm going to make the holes right there, okay? And so I'm just going to estimate, like, one hole is going to be right there, and one hole is going to be right there. I don't know if you can see black on blue right there, but I'm not even going to cut these holes in a circle. I'm just going to cut these holes in diamond shapes, so they don't even have to look that pretty. So you see those holes that I just made right there? And again, if we blow in that hole up here that I split the layers, so you can fix this so that it sounds a little bit better, because I just made that really, really fast, right? Earlier I made a little smaller one, and I think this smaller one might work a little bit better. So just from paper and tape, you can make a little simple instrument like that. But that music is more than just you don't have to have a really fancy instrument, a big organ, and that's my point. This little bamboo one, it might take you 1 or 2 hours to make, but you can make a very simple paper flute in just a matter of minutes. So let me show you another instrument. I had this one up here as well, but remember that first one I played at the beginning? It was this, so it's a little bit smaller than this big one. And we know that big instruments, right? They have a lower sound. So this one also has a lower sound, and I'm going to play a little bit of something very similar to what I played on the other instrument. And again, this is Hmong words, not just Hmong music, okay? So this one again is it's low instrument, so or it's a big instrument and it has a low voice. Now I'm going to keep talking, but I know there were some questions that Miss Wolfgram had emailed me, so I know that some folks, some students had some really very insightful and some very good questions. So I'm going to ask some or reread some of those questions and try to answer them, because there might be questions that somebody asked that someone might also be thinking. And someone I have the name here, Keegan, asked a very nice question and asked if which asked about Hmong tones. Now tones are how we say words. They have the word tone has different meanings, but in Hmong, tone means how you say a word, if you're saying it with a really low voice or if you're saying it with a really high voice. And how we say a word in Hmong actually changes the meaning of the word, so or of that sound. So for example, my name is Neng, and you have to say it that way, Neng. So if we do in music, we might learn do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? If you say do, re, mi, instead of saying me, if you say do, re, neng, that's how you have to say my name. Neng, do, re, neng. And if you say instead of do, if you say neng, do, re, mi, you say neng, re, mi. If you say neng, that means horse. That's not my name, okay? So if you say my name and you want to say it super correctly, you have to say neng, not neng. And that's one of the reasons why Hmong is such a musical language, is because every word, it kind of pairs with musical notes. So, and it magically kind of pairs. There are a lot of tonal languages, but they don't have that pairing. And Hmong is a language where we just happen to have those musical pairings, and that's what makes Hmong able to speak on these instruments. So every single word has every single sound, not a word, every single sound or syllables have 8 different versions, and each of those versions of tones are a different word and they have a different meaning. So Neng is my name. Again, Neng is my name. Neng means horse. You can hear the difference between that. Neng and nang. And then if I say neng with a lot of air coming out of my mouth, neng, that means a person. And if I say neng, and it sounds kind of like happier, neng, that means like a life. And then if I say nang with a lot of like sounds like I'm mad, nang, that's like a crossbow or a bow, like a bow and arrow. So there's all of those different versions of each syllable. Now Keegan also asked, and this is an interesting question, does the Hmong language have more words than English, or does English have more words than Hmong? And this is an interesting question to think about, because I think it's not an easy it's not an easy answer. Just like how when we say what is music or what is art, we can ask what is English, right? So you might know the word kindergarten. Kindergarten, we would say, is an English word, but really it comes from a German word. So kinder and garden, like meaning a garden of the youth or garden of young people, and that has it means like kindergarten, a class for the young kids, like 5 or 6 years old, right? So kindergarten is actually a German word, but we say it's an English word because we've used it for a really long time. And Hmong, Hmong, if we count words that Hmong has borrowed from other languages, I think Hmong and English probably have the same amount of words. But the different thing about Hmong is that we also have a language on this instrument, and you can see the language on the ja and the language on this little instrument, and then you have the languages on these two instruments. The question is, are those different languages? If I say, like I say kikia with my voice, and I say kikia with this, are those different languages, or are they the same language? And that's why when we talked about how many languages in the world there were before, 7,000 different languages, a lot of languages, but even within languages like Hmong, you might have different categories of what is a language. So Keegan asked a very good question about what language has more words. And I think it depends on what you consider an English word, what you consider a Hmong word, and if you consider Hmong instruments a different language, or if you think that's the same language. So you can ask yourself what you think is a language as well. Does anyone have any question that they want me to talk about right now that you might not have asked yet? While you think about a question, I'm going to get another instrument that I forgot to bring right here. I'm just going to walk right here off camera and grab an instrument.
So teachers, just so that this doesn't get super complicated, if we do have a question, it's okay for you to just toss it into the chat, and that might be easier than trying to call on a whole bunch of students across the district.
Yep.
Neng, we're gonna toss any questions into the chat. I can help you out with that while you're, go ahead with your next instrument.
Great. So this is my next instrument. Now you might just look at me and you're gonna say, Neng, that's just a plant. And it is a plant. I actually hang it from the ceiling in my bathroom. But this can also be an instrument, and I want to show you that, okay? I'm going to pick a leaf that looks nice. So let's pick a nice green leaf. I decided I'm gonna pick this one that I'm holding with my left hand, okay? And I'm just gonna rip it off. This is gonna be my next instrument. Now you might have friends that have played, maybe they put a blade of grass between their fingers and they blow like that. This is also something that Hmong people really like to do, is we take natural materials around ourselves and we make instruments from them. So I use the bamboo, some of my instruments, copper that we melt from rocks, and then we turn it into the reeds. And then you even have paper. You know, paper comes from trees. So everything that we take comes from nature, and we have a use to it. And this is a leaf. And if I fold it, in Hmong we say "Qu blong," and blong means leaf, and gu means to fold or to roll. So when we say blong, it means to fold a leaf or to roll a leaf. And that's when we turn a leaf into a musical instrument by making sounds from it. The reason why we say to roll it is because you don't just put it in your mouth, but you have to roll it and then you have to blow it. So that's why we say to roll a leaf. It's actually like a what's it called? Like a metaphor for blowing a leaf or blowing a leaf instrument. So if I go like this and I blow, if you just do that, you make a music, but you make a sound, but you can play any song. So I could play Hmong music. I could play like any song. So happy birthday, right? What about some of your teachers might know this song, Hey Jude by the Beatles. Maybe your parents have listened to this. Maybe you've heard it. So just this leaf, you can play any music, and you can also speak Hmong, and that's what makes Hmong music cool, is because it's so musical. And if this leaf can play Hey Jude, it can also speak the Hmong language. This is one of the loudest instruments that I know. This is so loud. If you were to stand across like if you've been to like Devil's Lake, if you were to stand across the whole lake, you could blow across and easily hear it. This instrument, the leaf, is extremely loud. Oh, we have so many questions. Thank you everyone for
Yeah,
asking so many questions.
I'll try to group
Miss
some
Wilfred,
together
yeah.
for you here, Nang.
You want to choose a few?
We had a few questions around language,
Uh-huh.
like how many languages do you speak and how does someone learn Hmong? Like if a student wanted to learn to speak Hmong?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Languages are so cool. I think languages are so cool because there's every language is different. There's no two languages that are the same. Otherwise, they wouldn't be different languages, right? And my advice to you, if you want to learn a language, the most important thing is to want to learn that language because you really like that language and because you really want to make friends and because you appreciate that language on a level that's you don't just want to learn it because you want to get a good grade or you want to learn it because you need to do some sort of job. You want to learn it because you really want to meet people that speak that language. That's the most important part of learning a language. So find a language. If there's a language you want to learn, you have to find friends that speak that language, and it's going to take a lot of time. So for example, I speak Hmong, that's my first language, and then of course I speak English, and I learned English in school, and then I also speak Spanish, and I started learning Spanish when I was in middle school, so when I was 12, and right now I'm 29, and 12, I think that's older than all of you so far. So if you start learning a language as soon as possible, that's great, because when you're young like you are, it's a lot easier. And I've been learning Spanish for 17 years and I'm still learning Spanish to this day. So the younger you start, the better it is. So I really encourage you all to learn any language on to any extent that you can learn. And that mostly boils down to really wanting to learn it because you want to speak with other people. Any other great
How about
questions?
we
Yeah.
had another student, I think this is great. How would you say the word music through an instrument in Hmong?
Ooh, that's such a good. That's that's a great question. That's probably one of the best questions anyone has asked me about Hmong music. So when I was in around your age, around 10 years old, a teacher asked me what is the Hmong word for music, and I actually didn't know. I didn't know what the Hmong word for music was, and I think it wasn't until very recently that I realized what the Hmong word for music was. And it was hard for me when I was 10 to know what the Hmong word for music was, because there's actually so many different Hmong words for music. So I'm going to give you a simple example, okay? In English, we call, so your mom's mom and dad, so your mom's parents, we call them grandma and grandpa, right? And your dad's parents, we call them grandma and grandpa. It's the same words, right? In Hmong, there's actually different words for grandma and grandpa. So if it's your dad's parents, you call them ba, meaning your dad's mom, and yo, meaning your dad's dad. But if it's your mom's dad, we call it yo ji, and if it's your mom's mom, we call it nia tai. So there's actually different words for grandpa or grandma in Hmong. And it's the same for the Hmong word for music, except that instead of just 2, there is about 20 different Hmong words for music. And that depends on in what case the music is used. So if it's music that's used during a funeral, we're going to call it it's going to be a different word of music. If it's music on a flute that you're just playing for fun, it's going to be a different word for music. I think the closest Hmong word for music is shua. And shua also means voice. And the reason why the Hmong word for music and voice is so similar is because, or it's the same word actually, is because when we speak Hmong, it's already music. And when we play music, it has to be Hmong words coming out of that. So shua is the Hmong word for music, but you might have shuokang, which is music that's played at a funeral, and you might have like shuota, which is music that I was playing, which is kind of just fun music about love or about life. Shuonja, which might be music that you play at night if you wanted to be sneaky. And then, you had your mblong is also a different type of music. So Hmong has about 15 to 20 words for music, depending on what type of music it is and how it's used. But if I were to say shua on this ja, and sometimes it's hard to hear the difference unless you say a couple words together. So I'm going to say gu lu shua. Gu lu shua, gu means me, and lu shua means the voice. So gu lu shua means my voice. So if I were to say gu lu shua, okay, that's what I'm going to say on this. And again, listen for the similarities. Gu lu shua. So gu lu shua, gu lu shua, gu lu shua. Can you hear the similarities? Raise your hand if you can hear how the instrument and the spoken words sound similar. Yeah, that's great. You guys are learning and picking up on it very fast. I see a lot of hands, so that makes me really happy. And so when we play an instrument like this, we can really hear the words, and it really comes out when you say the word music, which is shua. And then if I wanted to say it on something like this, it's harder to hear on an instrument like this because of all the instruments I've played today, the most special instrument is not any of the ones that I've made, okay? And you might have heard this before, but the most special instrument is your voice, definitely. You carry your voice everywhere you go. So wherever you go, your voice is a musical instrument. And that's really the Hmong philosophy for what is music. It should always be with you. It's in your heart. It's what you're able to recreate and say and tell through the art that you create. And in Hmong, we also, when we whistle, we can also whistle words. So if I say, "Nhóc có tứ," where are you? "Nhóc có tứ." And if I have anyone in the audience or in the classrooms who whose parents, maybe your dad, your uncle, your mom, your aunts, maybe you go hunting or something. I know that hunting is really big in Wisconsin, and I'm a big hunter myself. But when we go hunting, if you talk and you use a human voice, the animals, whatever you're hunting, they run away because they're really scared of humans. But if you whistle, you sound like a bird, and the animals don't get scared. And Hmong people in the past, we really used to do that. So instead of when we went hunting in like Laos or Thailand, Vietnam, China, instead of saying, "Where are you?" and you would scream it, "Hey, where are you? You walked away from me." You know, we would whistle like, "Where are you?" and it would sound like a it would sound like a bird, and that wouldn't scare the forest. It wouldn't change the forest. So again, I went off a little tangent, but if you were to say the word "sure" um, on this, it would just be. So you could just tap that and gulu shua, and it's hard when you just play one note to hear the difference. But if you play it in a whole sentence and then you can hear the different points of the words, just like when we're whistling, then it becomes easier to hear. But that was a great question. I really liked that. Really, I wanted to talk about what's the home word for music, but I almost would have forgot if it wasn't that question. But yep, Hmong has about 15, 20 words for music, depending on how you look at it.
How about where do you get your instruments from, and what was the first instrument you learned to play?
Um, the first instrument I learned to play, one of the first instruments I learned to play was in school, the recorder. The recorder was one of the first instruments I learned to play. And then I learned the Hmong recorder afterwards. They're very similar instruments. Um, they're a little bit different, but the first Hmong instrument I learned to play was the tamblai. So that first instrument that we learned with the free reed flute right here, the copper reed, and then the bamboo flute. And where I get them, I can either make them like I showed you with the paper, but it would be with bamboo, and it would take about 2 hours to make a flute. A recorder like that, it might take about 2 hours. Or there's a lot of Hmong artisans that make instruments too. Yeah.
How about do you have a favorite type of music?
Oh, that's a really good question too. I really like Hmong traditional spoken music. That's why I play all these instruments, right? It allows me to express myself, and sometimes if I'm feeling sad or angry, I can say certain things in music, in the Hmong language on music that allows me to express my emotions without doing it in words. So maybe no one can understand me, but I still let those emotions out, and that's what makes Hmong music also very powerful. Is sometimes it's really hard to say I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling angry, and that's okay if because it is hard to say those things. But the reason why Hmong music is also cool is because it allows us to say that out loud. We can say those things out loud in music, and other people might not understand us if they aren't listening very closely, or if they don't understand the Hmong musical instruments and the musical languages. But it still allows me to say I'm angry or I'm mad or I'm sad today, and that's really good for your emotional health because you don't have to bottle up those emotions all the time. So that's something that's very nice about Hmong music as well. What was the original question again? I totally forgot. I went off. I always talk about something different.
Yeah, we wanted to know what your favorite music was. So I think you got
Oh,
it
yeah.
in there. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, Hmong music. That's one reason why I really like Hmong music. But I like classical music. I also I really like I when I was a little bit younger, I used to break dance. So I like hip hop as well. And being from Wisconsin and being a hunter, I definitely enjoy some country music from time to time as well.
And how many instruments have you built?
Ooh, I think there's too many to count. Definitely around maybe over 100.
Wow. Who created Hmong music? Like who made it?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think sometimes when we think of stuff, we like to think of stuff and ask things like, oh, who was the first to make this thing, or who was the first to make this thing? And a lot of times there was no one first person. It was a whole group of people that came together and they gave ideas and they worked together and they made something very special. So it always reminds us to work in a team and really collectively figure something out. I don't think any one person made Hmong music. It was a bunch of people coming together and sharing what they thought sounded good and sharing what they thought they the art and the music that they could create with copper, brass, and bamboo. And the cool thing and different thing and unique thing about Hmong music is that it's usually when we think of music in America, we think about a lot of instruments playing together, like in band or in choir, where everyone sings and everyone plays together. Usually in Hmong music, it's one instrument. Sometimes, like at funerals, it might be two playing together, but usually it's just one instrument playing. And the main reason for that is because, as I said, Hmong music is always the Hmong language. So we're always speaking and we're always talking in our music. So if you had a whole classroom of people and they were all talking and saying different things, it wouldn't make sense because then you can't hear what one person is saying. Like maybe if your whole classroom is talking, your teacher might tell you to quiet down or have a moment of silence so they could talk. And that's kind of how Hmong music is like. We have usually it's one person because that allows everyone else to hear what that person is trying to say. And that's why Hmong music, it usually is just one instrument, but it's so different from other music too, because Hmong people didn't want to, I guess, way back when Hmong music was starting, Hmong people wanted to do something different and they didn't want to copy other music where everyone played together and they maybe came together and said, we're going to make something totally different where instead of just music, we're going to speak with music. We're not just going to play do dee dee do da la la la, but we're going to put real words into our music. And it shows how creative Hmong musicians were because they didn't want to copy anyone. They wanted to do something completely different. And it reminds us to be really creative when we talk about what is art that I talked about at the beginning of this session, well, at the beginning of this class. What is art and what is music? It's really important to learn from each other and to grow from each other and to make something big like music together, but it's also really important to be creative and to do something that no one else is doing, whether that is in music or art, or if you're a scientist and an inventor or a historian, write about something new, invent something new, make something new. It reminds us to be really, really creative. So Hmong music, to answer the question in short, I think a whole bunch of people made it and it wasn't one person. And that goes with everything in life, is to work together and that's the only way where you can make the best, coolest, most unique things, is to work together.
Well, I'm looking at the clock here and I know that a lot of schools are about to pack up and go, but I just wanted to say another thank you for speaking to us and sharing your music and sharing your heart through your music for sure. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for giving me your great undivided attention. And it makes me really happy that today I could teach you and you could learn a few things. Thank you.
I have
You're
lots
very,
of students yelling out thank you. So
you're very welcome.
everybody,
Yeah,
thanks
there
for
it is.
tuning in and we'll see our students tomorrow.
Thank you, everybody.
Say goodbye and thank you. Say thank you.
Thank you.